Hi, I'm Charles Purcell. This is the Daily Log for Tuesday, May 12, 2020. And we start with a correction from yesterday's show, just a small one. Someone pointed out to me that I identified Tom Papa, the comedian, storyteller, humorist. I called him Greg Papa yesterday. So out of curiosity, I Googled Greg Papa to see if that's a person and why I would say that so naturally. And as it turns out, Greg Papa is a broadcaster. He's a sports play-by-play guy in the Bay Area. And then once I saw that, I went, oh yeah, I remember Greg Papa. I lived out there for many years. I lived around the Bay Area in San Francisco and San Jose in the East Bay for a while. And Greg Papa was a very familiar voice. He currently is the play-by-play guy for your San Francisco 49ers. So yeah, Greg Papa, very familiar name and voice because I lived there for many years. And there it is. Today's correction of the day was, speaking of San Francisco, that's where I went to school at San Francisco State University, and I studied philosophy. Now, don't hold me on any of it. I don't remember any of it. Even at the time, I was the worst student as far as remembering dates and names, terms, any of it. I can never remember who said what. I think, therefore I am. One of them said that. But I was a good student in that I loved the topic. Just loved the whole idea of it. Okay, so I'm not talking all the philosophy majors here, but anybody who went to school even for a year or two, you had to take that one philosophy course, right? You had to take Philosophy 101. Basic logic you'd get there, right? It's a little introduction to philosophy. Some very introductory ethics, and moral principles. And most college kids will say that's their least favorite course. Oh, jeez. Especially the logic. If A, then B. A, therefore B. Most reasonable people find that boring, silly, ridiculous. Especially you get into all the hypothetical questions, the thought experiments, the paradox, all of that, the dilemmas. In my experience anyway, very few of us enjoyed that. There are only a handful of us who found it wonderful. And I did. I found it absolutely magical. Even the most mundane stuff, well, especially the most basic stuff, logic. The basic syllogism. If A, that is A representing some premise, if A is true, then B is true. That's your premise. Once you determine that A is true, therefore B has to be true. Oh my God, I thought this was manna from heaven for me. This was a magic trick that had been revealed. You can actually determine whether something is true or not. I thought it was the most beautiful thing in the world. I really did. Yeah. And I was thinking about this recently because I've been meaning to tell you about this for a couple of days. I saw this, late last week. A piece written by Len Niehoff, University of Michigan Law School. He's a law professor. Virus reveals we all need a class in evidence. Of course, we talked at length about the conspiracy theories and all of that. And thankfully, that didn't dominate the news for too long. But here's what Len Niehoff has to say. Numerous public officials and individuals have made dreadful decisions about how to assess and respond to the threat posed by COVID-19. Those errors reveal a fundamental flaw in our K-12 and collegiate education systems. We have failed to teach a subject of critical importance and as a result have imperiled our health, our economy, and our republic. We teach it in law school. We call it evidence. When I secured my first job as a law school professor many years ago, my sister asked what I would be teaching. I enthusiastically responded, "Evidence." She laughed and exclaimed, "Evidence? There's a class called Evidence?" I understand why the answer struck her as funny. Discovering that law school has a class called Evidence is like finding out business school has a class called Money, or dental school has a class called Teeth. It seems elemental to the point of silliness. But evidence is one of the most important courses law students take. It focuses on the principles that govern the admissibility of testimony, documents, and other things at trial. Trials seek to arrive at the truth so justice gets done, and evidence helps us ascertain that truth. Evidence law consists of a complicated body of rules and cases. Many students find it one of their hardest courses. Little wonder, setting protocols to figure out the truth makes for a heavy lift. So I'll let you continue from there. I'm reading from the Detroit Free Press is where I'm reading. As always, I link stories to my Facebook page. Yeah, we need evidence. And along with that, basic logic that, again, I really enjoyed in my Philosophy 101 course. That general ed required course that everybody had to take. And I fell in love. And yeah, we're not very good at it. We're not very good at discerning logic and applying logic and acting based on evidence. All right, so I just flipped onto Wikipedia here for some examples of valid argument forms. These are basic syllogisms, if you remember that term, syllogism. All right, if A, then B, A, therefore B. So this form of argument says that if one thing is true, then another will be true. It then states that the first is true, and the conclusion is now that the second thing is true. In other words, if A, then B, A, establish A, therefore B. Okay, so that's the basic form. So if today is Tuesday, then John will go to work. John goes to work on Tuesdays. So if today is Tuesday, that's A, then B, John will go to work. Well, today is Tuesday. So A is true. Therefore, John will go to work. B is true. It's basic logic. Now, there was always some faction of the classroom who wanted to argue with the professor. Well, what if John's sick? All right, fine. You're getting into other areas. Just keep it simple here. It's just we're just discussing basic logic. Well, no, man, there's more to it than that. They were very hard to deal with. So that's what we're facing now in our very weird time. The ability to employ, let alone recognize, basic logic and rules of evidence. So yeah, we could all use a class or two. Maybe we should use our free time that we have in quarantine to go back and do some online classes in basic logic and evidence. But then, so, okay, now I've got myself back in school, and now the dominoes kind of start falling. And I'm thinking, you know what? Even more interesting here is the area of ethics, moral principles. You may have seen, I have, in fact, I shared one. In fact, I created one. There are several memes out there about the trolley problem. Just in case you don't know, the basic trolley problem, it's a thought experiment in ethics. Again, I'm just playing it real easy here. I'm just reading from Wikipedia. I'm not going to pretend these are my own words. Anyway, so I'll never do that to you. I am reading from Wikipedia. The trolley problem is a thought experiment in ethics, modeling an ethical dilemma. It is generally considered to represent a classic clash between two schools of moral thought, utilitarianism and deontological ethics. Basically, utilitarianism is what's best for the most amount of people. Deontological ethics is a wider category of, there are rules regardless of consequences. Okay, so that's that. The general form of the problem is this. There is a runaway trolley barreling down the railway tracks. Ahead on the tracks, there are 5 people tied up and unable to move. The trolley is headed straight for them. Now, you are standing some distance off in the train yard next to a lever. If you pull this lever, the trolley will switch to a different set of tracks. Good, no-brainer. Wait, no. But then you notice that there is one person on the side track. So you have 2 options. Number 1, you do nothing and allow the trolley to kill the 5 people on the main track. Or option number 2, pull the lever, diverting the trolley onto the side track where it will kill 1 person. Which is the more ethical option? Or more simply put, what is the right thing to do? That's the trolley problem. So I'll leave it at that. Go ahead, discuss. But we've seen different little variations and memes and jokes on the trolley problem. The one I shared, there's a famous, very simple illustration of this, a simple drawing that many people have seen. And in it we see those basic elements, the trolley coming down, the one track with the 5 people tied, the diverted track where there's 1 person, and then you at the lever having this moral dilemma, what to do. Okay. So again, we've seen many variations of this and kind of jokes. Mine was the trolley coming down, 5 people on the track, but on the diverted track is not another person, but a huge pile of money. And the person at the lever is not you. It's Mr. Moneybags from Monopoly. So that was my little joke, my little meme. So we've seen a lot of different variations of that. But yeah, the trolley problem. What do you do? Well, whole books have been written about it, so we're not going to decide there's no right or wrong answer. Well, I guess you might decide there's a right answer. That's fine. Doing nothing will cause 5 deaths. Pulling the lever will cause 1 death. So in taking a utilitarian viewpoint, what's best for the most people? Obviously. But you have to take that act. In other words, it's already happening. There's a question of doing nothing or doing something. So if it kills the 5 people, you didn't do that. I guess you could say you let it happen, but you didn't actually do it. But if you pull the lever, you are actively engaged in killing that 1 single person. So you can see right away why college freshmen just get their minds bent by this thing. And the college professors take great delight. And the discussion gets heated. And again, whole books have been written about this. But that's where we are now, kind of. I mean, that's the argument, that the Republicans have been making now for weeks is a trolley problem. Well, people are going to die. We just got to let them die. We're not going to pull the lever and save these people, because pulling the lever will have consequences as well. It'll hurt the economy. It'll hurt Wall Street. It'll hurt my pocketbook. So, yeah, put that in terms of the trolley dilemma. But of course, in the original trolley problem, you are at the lever. That's what creates the moral dilemma. You have to make that choice. In these variations here, you're not really at the lever. You're one of the 5 people tied up, and those in power will decide your fate. Yeah, the whole reopen thing, before we have a health solution, has just gotten insane. A couple of weeks ago, you and I talked about the comparison to war. And at that point, they hadn't said this out loud yet, but now they are. We pointed out at the time that this argument that people have to die in order to preserve the American way is an old argument. It's been used for every war. Yes, it's absolutely acceptable to expect people to die for the greater good, for the American way of life. You die a hero. So we've heard that argument forever. And up until recently, they were kind of walking up to that edge, but not really coming right out and saying it. But now they're just saying it right out loud. They're just saying it right out loud. The one that caught my eye was Chris Christie. I guess it was maybe early last week. Yeah, about a week ago. Let me see if I could find that quote. Christie asked Monday, this is a CNN article, so this was last Monday, what his messaging would be to the American people if he sat in the Oval Office. He said this: "The message is that the American people have gone through significant death before." He pointed to the First and Second World Wars as examples of how, quote, "we've gone through it and we've survived it. We sacrificed those lives." This is unbelievable to me. Again, we were predicting this. This is what they were saying, but they were couching it. And now they're saying it right out loud. Continuing, Christie says, "We sent our young men during World War II over to Europe, out to the Pacific, knowing that many of them would not come home alive," he said, adding, "and we decided to make that sacrifice because what we were standing up for was the American way of life. In the very same way now we have to stand up for the American way of life." Does that make sense to you? If it does, we're not on the same page. We're not on the same planet. To make that comparison, first of all, as I pointed out at the time, I don't know about World War I. I don't know about World War II. I wasn't here. But every war since, nobody's fighting for freedom or for my way of life. And even if they were, let's examine exactly what that American way of life is. No, let's not get into that. That'll take hours. Over the next days, weeks, months, and years, we'll get into that. What exactly is the American way of life? How does it impact our neighbors, our friends? How does it impact people around the world when we are consuming the way we consume, the lifestyle we expect to have? Protecting the American way of life. They're just coming right out and say it. And so, would Chris Christie pull that lever? You're damn right. He'd pull the lever and make sure that that people die to protect the money. Absolutely he would. Okay. Another little thought experiment I remember one of my professors giving me was the flowers on a hillside. And this gets into whether or not you should wear a mask, whether or not you should social distance, just be a mensch, be a person. The flowers on a hillside was just a very simple little idea. As you drive home from work every day, you see on this particular hillside beautiful flowers. And it's very pleasing. And everyone passing along really enjoys this hillside of beautiful flowers. And you think, well, you'd like to take a little bouquet home with you. There's a whole hillside full of flowers. What's the harm if I take a couple of dozen? No harm at all. Well, the basic moral principle here is that you should act in a way that you'd want everyone to act. In other words, if everyone did what I did, would that be good or bad? If I alone take a couple of dozen flowers from an entire hillside, no harm done. Nobody's going to notice. Everyone will still enjoy the beautiful hillside. It's a common good for everyone. But if everyone did as I did, then all the flowers would be gone. And then that would be bad. So a very simple, very rudimentary little thought experiment. It's directly analogous to voting. If 100 million people are going to vote, well, of course my one vote doesn't make a difference. Nobody can say it does with a straight face. But if everyone acted as I did, then there certainly will be an impact. And this is the decision we're asked to make right now. I'm one of 330 million people in this country. My activities don't really matter much. Even if I got it myself and infected a couple people and I died, who cares? We wouldn't even cause a blip. just my individual action. Of course. And a lot of people want to stick with that. But use the flowers on the hillside little story. I need to act in a way that I want others to act. Because if we all do it, then we're screwed. Then millions of people are going to die. Then there's a real impact. Then there are no flowers on the hill. Yeah, let's all go back and take our Philosophy 101 course. Basic logic, basic evidence, basic ethics. And I saved this one. I saved this one until last. I thought about this earlier, but I just couldn't bring myself to talk about it. Would you kill baby Hitler if you had the chance? You've heard this one, right? If you could go back in time, would you kill baby Hitler? Now, again, whole books have been written. You can go back and forth with a lot of different possibilities on this question, but it is a moral dilemma. And the reason this came up, and the reason I've been hesitating, I don't want to say this out loud. I honestly don't want to say this out loud. But we all know by now the virus is in the White House. Mike Pence's press secretary, I forgot her name, Miller, Kelly Miller, I forgot her name. She's Stephen Miller's wife and Mike Pence's press secretary. She's tested positive, and she was working very closely, side by side, for weeks with the task force and with Mike Pence. President personal valet tested positive. Now, under basic protocol, under the guidance and recommendations of the CDC and Dr. Fauci, anybody who was in close contact with these positive tested people would then themselves quarantine for 14 days. But of course, Trump and Pence aren't doing that. And they're still not wearing masks. To this day, they're not wearing masks. Although they've ordered now everybody in the White House, everybody else has to wear a mask. And that was just up until just yesterday. They finally made that rule because they got scared. And then Ivanka Trump's personal assistant has also tested positive. We all made the same joke in our heads, right? If this was a horror movie, it's inside the house. So, the president's valet, the vice president's press secretary, evil Stephen Miller's wife, Ivanka Trump's personal assistant, and 11 Secret Service employees infected with coronavirus. 60 are in self-quarantine. So the Secret Service having their own little hot spot. And all of this is why I got to thinking very secret, disturbing thoughts that I have not said out loud. Please, God, atheist here calling. So you know it's serious when an atheist calls to you. Please take him out. Just take him out. Take out both of them. Would I kill baby Hitler? I don't know. Do I want Pence and Trump to fall from this thing? God save me, yes, I do. I've never wished that on anybody in my life. Even when they killed bin Laden, nobody was a fan of bin Laden. We wanted him caught or captured or killed. And I remember thinking at the time, I guess that's probably something they needed to do. But there was no way I was going to take any pleasure in it, any glee, which many people demonstrated. I mean, there was applause and there was dancing in the streets. And it's like, man, if it comes to a point where you have to kill somebody, it's just gotten that serious and that dire that somebody has to die. At least be somber about it. Shed a tear for just the loss of humanity overall. But I can't. These are my deepest, darkest, most secret thoughts right now. I'm sharing with you. If it was reported today that the president tested positive, I would be happy. I would be glad. And if he suffered a painful, long death, alone on a ventilator. I'm really afraid that glee would just continue. And when he finally breathes his last breath a week or two from today, I would dance on his grave. And I never had this thought about anyone ever in my life. And I'm having those thoughts. And I'm just being honest right here. This one individual, sick, damaged Hulk and his little merry band of sycophants and henchmen are responsible for those long, slow, painful deaths of tens of thousands of people. You've heard about the Trump death clock that's up now in Times Square. And it's up over, I don't know what the number is, up over 50, 60,000. As we've said so many times, this was going to be bad, no matter what. It was an unknown virus. It was going to be a challenge. But the direct action, and almost always, well, not almost, always for his own personal benefit, for his own personal gain, or his just utter incompetence and insanity, it's 100 times worse than it ought to have been. At what point do we hold this guy and his henchmen accountable? And now they're saying right out loud that the numbers are just fine with them. Just go out and sacrifice. Epidemiologist slams U.S. coronavirus response, quote, close to genocide by default. Yeah. What else do you call mass death by public policy? Asked Yale's Greg Gonsalves. Yeah, public policy, knowingly resulting in tens of thousands of deaths. How else can you describe this? 81,852 deaths. If you want to picture that, Lambeau Field up in Green Bay, Wisconsin, capacity 81,441. You ever been to a game at Lambeau? Look around. Look at everybody. Add another 400 people to it, and that's how many people have died. And through a combination of screw-ups and bad decisions and outright lies and outright evil decisions, that number just continues to grow and will spike again, almost certainly, with all this reopening nonsense. So yeah, would you kill baby Hitler if you had the chance? And do you smile at the prospect of this virus taking out Trump and Pence? There, I said it out loud. I said it out loud. I don't feel good about it, but it's the truth. All right, I love you guys. I'm Charles Purcell, and this has been the Daily Log for Tuesday, May 12th.